December 10th, 2008, Manhattan, New York, the Lipstick Building on 3rd Avenue. Bernie Madoff sits in his office on the 17th floor. Outside, the financial world is collapsing. Lehman Brothers just fell. The stock market is in free fall, and investors are panicking, demanding their money back. But Madoff has a problem, a massive problem. He doesn't have their money. He never did. For nearly 3 decades, he's been running the biggest con in Wall Street history. $65 billion. Thousands of victims. And tomorrow, it's all going to come crashing down. This is the story of how a lifeguard from Queens became the most trusted man on Wall Street, how he fooled some of the smartest investors in the world, and how he got away with it for 20 years, even though people kept telling the authorities something was wrong. Bernie Madoff didn't start out as a criminal. In fact, his legitimate business was wildly successful. He helped build NASDAQ. He was chairman of the stock exchange. He had everything: wealth, respect, power. So why did he do it? Why did he risk everything to run a fraud that would eventually destroy thousands of lives, including his own families? The answer is more disturbing than you think. April 29th, 1938, Queens, New York. Bernard Lawrence Madoff is born into a working-class Jewish family in Laurelton. His father, Ralph, is a plumber who dabbles in stocks. His mother, Sylvia, trades securities from home. In 1963, the SEC actually investigates her for improper record-keeping, though the case gets dismissed. Money problems run in the family. Madoff goes to Far Rockaway High School, where he meets Ruth Alpern, his future wife. He's on the swim team, works as a lifeguard at Silver Point Beach Club, saves every dollar he earns. After high school, he spends a year at the University of Alabama, joins a Jewish fraternity, then transfers to Hofstra University, graduates in 1960 with a degree in political science, briefly attends Brooklyn Law School, but drops out after his first year. Why? Because he's got bigger plans. At age 22, Madoff takes $5,000 he saved from lifeguarding and installing sprinkler systems. His father-in-law, Saul Alpern, a successful accountant, loans him another $50,000, and Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities is born. He operates out of his father-in-law's accounting office in Manhattan, starts as a penny stock trader. The business is legitimate, and it grows fast. By the 1970s and 1980s, Madoff's firm is thriving. He's not just trading stocks anymore, he's innovating. He develops computerized trading systems with his brother Peter. Their software is so good that NASDAQ eventually adopts it. Madoff becomes a pioneer of electronic trading. He serves on multiple National Association of Securities Dealers committees, becomes a consultant for the SEC on trading regulations. In 1990, 1991, and 1993, he serves as chairman of NASDAQ. Bernie Madoff is now Wall Street royalty. His brokerage business is making millions. He's respected, influential, connected. He rubs shoulders with politicians, celebrities, billionaires. He and Ruth donate hundreds of thousands to political campaigns. They give millions to charity. On paper, his life is perfect. But according to FBI investigators, sometime in the early 1980s, maybe even earlier, Madoff makes a decision that will change everything. He starts running a side business, an investment advisory service. And this is where the fraud begins. Here's how it worked, and it's almost embarrassingly simple. Madoff tells investors he has a special strategy, something he calls the split strike conversion. It sounds sophisticated, complex. He explains it involves buying S&P 100 stocks, selling call options, buying put options, a collar strategy designed to generate steady returns with minimal risk. Investors hand over their money. Madoff promises consistent returns of about 10 to 12% annually. Not crazy high, not suspiciously low, just steady, reliable profits year after year. But here's what's actually happening. Madoff isn't investing the money at all. He's depositing it straight into his personal bank account at Chase Manhattan Bank. When investors want to withdraw money or check their returns, Madoff's employees create fake trading statements, completely fabricated. They use old issues of the Wall Street Journal to find the best performing stocks from previous months, then backdate the trades to make it look like Madoff perfectly timed the market. It's a Ponzi scheme, classic and simple. New investor money pays off old investors. As long as more money keeps coming in than going out, the scheme survives. And Madoff is brilliant at making sure money keeps flowing in. Madoff doesn't advertise. He doesn't need to. Instead, he creates an aura of exclusivity. You can't just invest with Madoff. You need to be invited. There are minimum account balances, usually $1 million. He turns people away, makes them beg to get in. It becomes a status symbol on Wall Street. If you have an account with Bernie Madoff, you're special. He cultivates relationships with wealthy businessmen in New York and Palm Beach, Florida. These early investors get their promised returns. They tell their friends. Their friends tell their friends. Suddenly, everyone wants in. Madoff targets the Jewish community specifically. He's a trusted insider. He sits on the boards of Jewish charities, the Jet Foundation, the Robert the Lapin Charitable Foundation. He and Ruth are major donors. Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel invests with him. Steven Spielberg, Kevin Bacon, and Kyra Sedgwick. New York Mets owner Fred Wilpon. Entire charities put their endowments with Madoff. At his peak, Madoff has nearly 24,000 clients. The paper value of their accounts? $68 billion. None of it is real. The red flags are everywhere, if anyone bothers to look. In 1992, 10 years before the collapse, someone alerts the SEC about Madoff's business practices. The SEC investigates, finds nothing. In 2000, a financial analyst named Harry Markopolos is asked to reverse engineer Madoff's returns. Markopolos spends a few hours looking at the data and immediately knows something's wrong. Madoff claims he's generating consistent profits, regardless of market conditions. Up markets, down markets, doesn't matter. He produces steady 1% monthly returns like clockwork. Markopolos does the math. It's impossible. He compares it to a baseball player hitting 966 for the season when elite players hit 300 to 400. He calls it what it is, either a Ponzi scheme or front-running. In 2001, Markopolos submits a detailed complaint to the SEC's Boston office. They ignore it. He submits another complaint in 2005. This time, it's a 19-page document titled, "The World's Largest Hedge Fund is a Fraud." He outlines 29 red flags, mathematical impossibilities, trading volume inconsistencies, the works. The SEC investigates Madoff's firm in 2005. They send examiners to his office, but they ask the wrong questions. They never check his trading records with the depository trust company, which would have immediately exposed the fraud. Madoff later admits that if investigators had just asked to see his stock records, the scheme would have been over. They never asked. Why did the SEC miss it? Part of it was incompetence. Investigators didn't understand the sophisticated trading strategies they were supposed to be examining. But there's also something darker. Madoff had connections inside the SEC. His niece, Shauna Madoff, worked as the compliance officer at his firm. In 2003, she meets Eric Swanson, an assistant director at the SEC's Office of Compliance Inspections and Examinations. Swanson is literally investigating her uncle's firm when they meet. They start dating. In 2007, they get married. In 2004, while the investigation is ongoing, an SEC lawyer named Genevieve Walker Lightfoot raises concerns about unusual trading at a Madoff fund. She's told to drop it and focus on something else. The investigation goes nowhere. Many Wall Street firms distrusted Madoff. Some refused to do any trading with him because his returns didn't make sense. But the SEC kept clearing him. Madoff later said the investigators acted like Lieutenant Columbo, bumbling around but never connecting the dots. If they'd checked with the depository trust company, if they'd looked at his actual trading volume, if they'd done basic due diligence, they would have caught him. They didn't. September 2008, the financial crisis hits. Lehman Brothers collapses, Bear Stearns fails, the stock market crashes, everyone's losing money, and suddenly, Madoff's investors want out. Between September and December 2008, investors try to withdraw $7 billion from Madoff's fund, but Madoff doesn't have $7 billion. He doesn't have anything close to that. The money was never invested. It was spent on his lifestyle, on paying earlier investors, on running the business. Madoff tries desperately to secure emergency funding. He reaches out to associates, trying to raise money. Nothing works. The scheme is collapsing. By early December, Madoff knows it's over. December 9th, 2008, Madoff tells his sons, Mark and Andrew, that he plans to pay out $173 million in bonuses to employees. 2 months early, his sons are confused. If the firm is struggling to pay clients, where's this bonus money coming from? They go to his apartment the next day. Ruth Madoff is there. Bernie sits them down and tells them the truth. It's all a giant lie, he says. Basically, one big Ponzi scheme. He tells them he has absolutely nothing left. The investment fund is worthless. He's planning to turn himself into authorities in about a week, but he wanted to use the last remaining money to pay employees first. His sons are devastated. They immediately contact their lawyer. The next morning, they report their father to federal authorities. December 11th, 2008, the FBI arrests Bernie Madoff at his penthouse apartment. When agents ask him if there's an innocent explanation for everything, Madoff replies, "There is no innocent explanation." He admits to running a Ponzi scheme, says it started in the early 1990s, though investigators later believe it began much earlier, possibly as far back as the 1970s. The initial estimate of losses, $50 billion, later revised to $65 billion, though about half of that amount was fictitious profits that never actually existed. Real investor losses were closer to 18 to 20 billion. The victims are staggering in number and profile. 16,521 investors file claims. Thousands more are affected indirectly through feeder funds and charities. Entire charities are wiped out. The Pecauer Foundation, the Jet Foundation, Robert Y. Lapin Charitable Foundation, gone. Elie Wiesel loses his life savings and his foundation's endowment, $15 million. Everyday people lose their retirement accounts, their children's college funds, everything. March 12th, 2009. Madoff pleads guilty to 11 federal felonies: securities fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, perjury, making false statements. He doesn't negotiate, doesn't make a deal, just pleads guilty. In his allocution, he expresses regret, says he thought he could fix it in the beginning, that it would be temporary, but it became impossible to stop. The longer it went on, the deeper the hole became. June 29th, 2009. Sentencing day. Judge Denny Chin calls Madoff's crimes extraordinarily evil and sentences him to 150 years in prison, the maximum possible sentence. Madoff is 71 years old. It's effectively a death sentence. He's also ordered to forfeit $170 billion in restitution. His wife, Ruth, is forced to give up almost everything, keeping only $2.5 million. Madoff is sent to the Federal Correctional Institution in Butner, North Carolina, a medium-security prison. He will spend the next 12 years there. The fallout destroys Madoff's family. His brother, Peter, who worked at the firm for 40 years as chief compliance officer, pleads guilty and receives 10 years in prison. He forfeits all his assets. Madoff's sons, Mark and Andrew, claim they knew nothing about the fraud. Investigators believe them, but the damage is done. December 11th, 2010, exactly 2 years after their father's arrest, Mark Madoff hangs himself in his Manhattan apartment, while his 2-year-old son sleeps in another room. September 3rd, 2014, Andrew Madoff, Bernie's last surviving child, dies of cancer at age 48. In February 2022, Bernie's sister Sandra and her husband Marvin are found dead in an apparent murder-suicide in their Florida home. The Madoff name has become synonymous with betrayal and financial ruin. Ruth Madoff lives in seclusion, shunned, hated. Her sons are dead. Her husband's legacy is destruction. April 14th, 2021. Bernie Madoff dies in prison at age 82 from chronic kidney failure. He never showed true remorse. In prison interviews, he blamed the financial system, blamed regulators, blamed everyone but himself. To date, a court-appointed trustee named Irving Picard has recovered about $14.6 billion of the stolen money. Victims have received about 73% of their principal investments back. But the psychological damage can't be measured in dollars. People lost their life savings, their homes, their retirement. Some victims committed suicide. One of the most disturbing aspects of Madoff's case isn't just the scale of the fraud, it's how unnecessary it was. His legitimate brokerage business was incredibly successful. He was already wealthy, already respected. He didn't need to steal billions. Some say it was ego. He wanted to be seen as a genius investor, someone who could deliver returns no matter what the market did. Others say it was addiction, the thrill of the con, the power of knowing he was fooling everyone. Madoff himself claimed it started with one bad trade. He lost money for his father-in-law's friends and was too ashamed to admit it, so he covered it up. Then he had to keep covering it up until the lie became too big to ever escape. But here's what's truly terrifying about the Madoff case. It wasn't sophisticated. It wasn't genius. It was simple, painfully simple. Fake account statements. Money in, money out, that's it. And he got away with it for decades because people wanted to believe. They wanted access to the exclusive club. They wanted the steady returns. They trusted the name. Bernie Madoff proved that the biggest scam in history doesn't need to be complicated. It just needs trust. And people are desperate to trust. The Madoff scheme destroyed thousands of lives, obliterated charities, ended in suicide and death, and it all could have been prevented if just one person at the SEC had asked the right question. That's the real lesson. Trust, but verify. Always verify. Because in the end, Bernie Madoff's biggest con wasn't the Ponzi scheme. It was making people believe he was too respectable to be a criminal.
Thank you.